Welcome to another edition of the X-Files, the Divorce and Separation podcast with me, Alex Wynn, and my friend and colleague, Liza Friedwald.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what time you're watching this.
That's right, and wherever in the world you might be watching it. This is a little podcast by two family lawyers who work in Australia, helping people navigate their way through our family law system. It's purely information only, just Liza and I having a chat. If you need legal advice with your situation, please get specialist tailored advice. You can come to me, you can go to Liza, or you can go to your own family lawyer. Don't rely upon this podcast. It's just some info. Hopefully it'll be helpful, some information out there, and it's all gratis, of course, so feel free to shout out if you have any questions. So today, Liza's come up with a great topic, which is one that comes across our pathways from time to time, which is separation under one roof. Why?
Happens a lot.
What do we mean by this? I mean, what are we even talking about? What does separation under one roof mean in a legal sense?
Yeah, so when parties separate, they don't actually need to formally and physically separate from one another. You can say our relationship or our marriage is over and still remain living together in the same house. You can be in the same bed. It doesn't have to be in a separate residence. So in terms of that concept of being separated under one roof, it does make things a little bit different when we go through the processes of a family law separation, because if you're getting divorced, for example, you might need to prove that you are in fact separated. The main thing to know about being separated under one roof, it's a hot topic, I think, for a lot of families these days, because when you're in a relationship, you have that opportunity to pool your assets. In fact, there's a little bit of savings that you can get from being in that relationship and still sharing all those costs. There is a bit of merit to sometimes, if you can, staying separated under one roof until you sort all your business out.
So it becomes more of a financial necessity or a financial convenience that you'd stay with your ex-partner, living in the same home, the same roof, but very much different lives, except for some shared financials. Because there's often that question of, well, we're not really separated because we keep all of our financials together. And that's not how the law works here, is it? It's very much more about the nuance of that particular relationship and how does the outside world see it, and I suppose to some extent, what have you communicated to each other?
What happens behind closed doors? Well, that's just your business.
I know of a few couples like this with whom, intimate moments still can arise after the actual separation. People, fall into bed with one another by accident, I suppose, or by sheer convenience. And that doesn't necessarily put the relationship back on track.
No.
In a legal sense, who knows what really goes on in human relationships and human affairs? Only the heart knows that. But as our dry, dusty hearts were removed at law school a long time ago, we'll just stick to talking about what's written down in the legislation and what the cases say. Obviously, you can catch more flies with honey than you would with vinegar, and perhaps
totally. That's exactly what it is. It's all about the honey.
It doesn't have to mean you're sleeping with your ex. It just means perhaps getting on as well as you can. You do not have to be enemies when you're trying to work out a resolution to a previous relationship.
And the other thing to bear in mind, if you've got kids, if you guys can remain amicable for that period of time while you're working things out, it's going to be a lot smoother for your children. If you've got both parents living in the home and everyone seems to be, okay, mum might be in one room, dad might be in another room, but the child gets to spend time with both parents as if nothing has really happened, what's the harm in that to the child?
It probably works easier with younger children who haven't really grasped the nuance of adult relationships. Bit trickier with teenagers because, as we all know, they know everything automatically the second they turn 13.
Yeah.
So that can work sometimes for young children, just a bit of stability and consistency whilst you try and work out the long term. All of this, I mean, we'd say, as we say in every one of our podcasts, safety first. We're not suggesting for a moment that people ought to stay with, or that it's a great idea to stay with somebody who's abusive, or if there's any risks of harm or threats or violence or anything like that, then safety first, always. But if you are just two people whose relationship has run its course. You might not loathe one another, it's just over. That's fine. I mean, you can carry on, you can make your arrangements work for you. From the lawyer's perspective, if you are married, then there are particular rules and regulations around when can you apply for a divorce. We're lucky in Australia in the sense that we have only one ground for divorce here, and it's just the irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. As
I
evidence,
thought it was an affair. I'm joking.
well, that might be the reason, but it's not the legal grounds for a divorce. It's just
It's
you
so
know,
disappointing.
and
It's very disappointing for many people going through it because they want some revenge. They want to have their day in court. They want to be saying, "Oh, you've been sprung. You're a terrible person. We hate your guts."
some
And
drama,
yeah, there needs to
you
be
know.
something. And I'm going to divorce you because you've done this, and you can't divorce me. And yes, you
Yeah,
can.
some scandal that would unearth, like on those reality TV shows that I would love to pretend that I watch, but obviously I don't. I just see
I
clips of them
do.
occasionally. I
I
know
don't
you do.
pretend. I watch it
What is it,
all the rubbish in the
Married at
world. I
First Sight, and
watch.
all that kind of stuff, where people are forever having scandalous kind of relationships that flounder within moments of meeting. We're talking about people that actually have been married on a real basis.
Yeah.
If you want to get divorced, there could be a million reasons why, but in legal terms, there's just one ground for divorce here, and that's the irretrievable breakdown of your marriage. And that's only proven by a 12-month separation period, which is where we cycle back to our separated under one roof from a legal point of view today. That 12 months, you could reside in the same home. That's okay. And when you do your divorce 12 months after separation, not before the 12 months, but 12 months and one day after you've separated, you can do that even if you've been living in the same place together for that period of time. You will need to show the court that you genuinely were separated. So that's almost certainly going to mean you'll have to write an affidavit saying this is what went on, this is how we separated, and this is how we've had separate lives. Really helpful if you've got a friend or somebody else that can back that up with a second affidavit saying, oh, absolutely, yeah, John and Jenny have been living separately ever since he, slept with the schoolmistress or whatever it might have been.
Yeah, I was going to say affidavits from the mistress.
That's right. Oh, gosh, yeah.
That's pretty clear. That's pretty clear evidence.
Yeah, that would be good evidence, but it's normally self-explanatory. You will normally, if this is a genuine separation and it's just, as we said, you're on a financial ship together, so you can't jump off that straight away. And I mean, gosh, with property prices and rental markets being what they are at the moment in Australia, you can completely get why people stay, in that same place. It's not that I insist that you leave. I've got nowhere to go and I can't afford to go, and that could be the answer. And if they're not a hideous, abusive, monstrous person, then they should be treated with some respect. It'll probably pay dividends when you get to negotiating.
Mostly. Right. So, in terms of what counts as separated, then it's pretty grey. There's muddy waters there. It's not a one size fits all. So it's not as simple as we have separate bank accounts, because plenty of people have separate bank accounts, but they're still together. It's not as simple as we don't live together anymore, because plenty of people who are in a relationship and may even be married, for example, don't live together. It could be we don't have sex anymore. Well, plenty of marriages and relationships that are still together don't have that level of intimacy. So it's a combined effect of what it is that goes on in the home collectively, coupled with the way that the couple or the ex-couple present to the public. And it's usually the public perception about the separation that is going to be the most crucial of the evidence as to determining whether or not parties have in fact separated.
That's right.
Because if it's the case that the two of you still go out to dinner and you go to friends and you present as a couple, chances are people, including a court who looks at your case, is going to think, I think you still are in fact a couple. You may not tick those other boxes. If there's a combined intention, a mutual intention for both of you, and you both say, no, we're definitely not a couple, different story. But a lot of the time, Alex, as you would know, the dispute comes down to when is that date of separation. And so it becomes really important. I've had cases where the separation period has gone for 10 years. and one party says, oh, no, no, no. So, that separation, it does need to be communicated in some way to the other person.
It's the easiest thing in the world, isn't it? Just to send somebody a text, for example, saying, hey, look, what we said earlier, yeah, it's definitely over as far as I'm concerned. Let's try and work out how we're going to do things. You put a little marker down like that, and then you save that message.
Totally.
Whether you screenshot it and save it to the cloud, or you back up your phone regularly and religiously, I don't know, but send some clear communication. If it's actually over, then in a legal sense, you may need to be able to prove that in the future. It's rare that you'll have that letter on the dining room table, although you and I have both written those letters saying, hey, look, the relationship's over from a legal sense, but financial reasons, you're going to need to share the home for the next X months until you work things out. Rare that you'd have a lawyer's letter to do that. The easiest option these days is probably a quick text.
Yeah.
You could send an email if you want to. I mean, that's fine.
What do you think about social media? What did they say on Facebook?
Oh gosh, yeah, relationship status, yeah.
Relationship status.
Yeah, I
think
guess why not?
That's pretty clear, isn't it?
I'd say so.
Because you can have it's complicated. So I wouldn't go with the it's complicated message, because that to me looks like you're still thinking about it potentially.
It's
or you're not
clear.
quite game to tell anyone. Whereas if you say single, it's clear. Or in your post, what are you feeling today? Public announcement, I wish to break up with,
I think from a...
Could you imagine if that was the case? If people did that would be horrendous.
Yeah, breaking up with... I suppose it's a bit like when you were at school and you'd break up with somebody by having a friend go over
You're
and talk to their friend.
You're dumped.
My friend says you're dumped and all of that. Or, here's your watch back, I've smashed it into a million pieces, you're dumped. For example.
Okay, so as much as it sounds pretty cruel, I think those social media ways of dumping someone, it makes it quite clear that there's been a communication.
I think legally it's going to give you good evidence. I think as a human, I probably wouldn't do that. Hopefully,
I could just imagine the judge reading it, just going, and you did what, Mr. Wynn?
Well, she's written down all other things there that I'm supposed to. Yeah, I'm probably the least likely person to communicate through social media, that sort of thing. For my money, and when you're in the legal space and you're dealing with all this sort of stuff, social media is very often not your friend. Things that people post on Facebook and Insta and things like that, when they're angry and upset and reaching out for some kind of validation or just to scream into the void, they don't stay hidden. They are out there forever, and it's wonderful evidence if you're on the other side of it later on.
Yep, totally.
So I mean, we didn't mean to come on to talk about socials, but separation under one roof. You can imagine some of the households, if people are being immature, if they're being argumentative and angry. I'm not talking about abusive. I'm just talking about people who are spatting and squabbling, and that's the situational dynamic they find themselves in.
I think it's a bloke, and he takes videos of himself saying, I'm not an abusive husband, but when I'm angry with my wife, this is what I do. And he does things like he will put his dirty socks not in the washing basket. It will be just beside the washing basket, and, leave some cupboard doors open, leave some drawers open, things like that.
Turn the tins around.
Yeah, it's just that sort of stuff. And a lot of that does go on when people are separated, because they don't want necessarily to cross the line and be abusive. But if they happen to be a nuisance, they're not going to worry.
All these little microaggressions. It's like the opposite of, they say people can show love through service, like cooking dinner for somebody and that sort of stuff. It's quite the opposite of that, isn't it? It's leaving deliberately dirty plates in the sink for a day too long or whatever it might. Just those. I remember watching one of those fantastic panel shows, David Mitchell talking about, it was the Would I Lie to You? He's married to Victoria Curran, of course, both, gifted raconteurs and writers, saying when he gets annoyed with her, his little act of aggression is he'll move the bookmarks from the books that she's got by the side of the bed in different places. And I thought, there's a level of pettiness that I can aspire to.
Yes.
But I get where you're coming from. It doesn't have to necessarily be an entirely happy household all the time. It needs to be free of abuse. It needs to be free of risk. But if you can put up with it, then you can certainly, from a legal point of view, say to a judge or the court in a year's time, we really have been separated for over this period of time. Here's the reasons why. Here's how our life's been looking at. Here's my story in an affidavit. Here's my friend corroborating me. And you should get your divorce. It shouldn't be a problem. We don't have to have, as you say, sadly, we don't have to have little men in Macs with with cameras jumping out of wardrobes these days to take incriminating pictures. But
Would be fun though.
people seem to take incriminating pictures of themselves all the time now and put
I
them
know
on
that
socials.
you don't have to pay anyone. It's called selfies.
Yeah, madness.
And they post things all the time. Again, we're back at socials, but
It's a big part of our life these days.
I think it is.
As family lawyers, we see a lot of interconnectivity between people through social media, and then that's being used to say, see, look, the kids were fine, or, this is what happened in a relationship. She did this and he did that. I think I've mentioned the timings of these things, the 12-month period.
Yeah.
That's in relation purely to being able to apply for a divorce, of course. So that doesn't obviously affect de facto couples. But separation's important for de facto couples and for married couples when it comes to sorting out their money, sorting out financials. So let's have a quick recap as to how that would work.
Yeah, so de factos, you've got 2 years from the date of separation, something that people do overlook quite quickly. And it's particularly those who have not intermingled a lot of their financial affairs with one another. I often have people come to me that have got a matrimonial home, even though they're not married, it doesn't matter. It might be owned by the de facto husband, but the de facto wife and the child are living in it. And you might be coming up to that 2-year post-separation mark and you sort of think, oh, well, we don't really have much to divide up. We don't really need to worry about it. Well, yes, you do if you're the one that doesn't have anything in your name and you're coming up to that 2-year mark. And that's why the separation date is so important, that you can work that out. And a lot of the time it will be, obviously it's the de facto husband's interest to try and push that date as early as possible so that the wife is then out of time and she has to ask permission to try and see whether or not it's going to be just and equitable to do anything with that property, or if it's just going to be he just gets to keep it. And so it's super important to make sure that when you do separate, even if you are living together under the one roof, that you start gathering that sort of evidence, such as the text messages, if you've put it all up on socials, and if you've changed your status on Facebook, well, you can screenshot that and you can send it to yourself so you've got that contemporaneous record.
I'd jump in as well and say you don't have to wait until you're 2 years or your 12 months from the divorce taking effect. Go and get some advice early on. Go and sit down with Liza or with an Alex or your favorite flavor of family lawyer. A lot of us will just spend a few minutes having a chat with people without any kind of obligation, just to point you in the right direction. You know that you're going to do something about it in the future, but you're not ready now, and it's only just happened. But having a quick chat with somebody that works in this sphere all the time at this stage, at an early stage, will give you a little bit of a shopping list of things to do that you can tick off over those months ahead so that you get your evidence right from the very beginning. It'll help you in the future if you're not having to remember what was said 2 years ago, and then you've got a proper record of that. So have a quick chat with a family lawyer at an early stage is usually a very good idea. You don't have to tell the other person you're doing it. You can do, but you don't have to.
No. And same for all the bills and expenses. You probably need to get some advice as to what to do about that. If it's your intention to keep the home, you probably want to have the other party keep contributing so that you don't have to take over a massive mortgage. You don't want to be taking over more debt. You don't want to be taking over a property that has unpaid rates notices and things like that. You want to make sure that your credit rating's preserved and everything else is paid along the way, that everything is running smoothly in that household. Because if it's not, you do need to weigh up whether or not it's worth your while to move out or have the other party move out and coming up with some kind of arrangement.
You did make a good point a few minutes ago there about the collation of information and documents and things like that. So whilst you are separated but under the same roof, you will probably have a lot more access to the financial records and documents that you might need in a few months or even a year's time. So as you're saying, keep a note of that, screenshot things, take pictures of things so that you've got an actual contemporary record. And I say save it into the cloud because phones get dropped, phones get lost, phones get wiped for all sorts of reasons. But if you've saved it into, as you say, send it to yourself but as an email attachment, and if you've got a Gmail or an Outlook or something like that, you'll always be able to pick up that information in the future. But whilst you're there living the life, you're okay to take pictures of the utility bills. You're okay to keep a record of who's paying what. And it's much easier to do that whilst you're in the home. Once you're out, you might very well find the locks are changed upon you, upon your departure, and it becomes a lot harder then. And getting disclosure out of somebody who doesn't want to give disclosure is the bane of every family lawyer's life. I mean, I'm sure, like you, I've got multiple matters right now that I'm trying to progress, and I can't because I'm not getting any information out from the other side. And so it becomes frustrating. If you have the chance now to get it and you're living in that same roof, get that information whilst you can. It's so much easier to get it at that point. So some questions around this. So what if you have an ex who refuses to believe that you've separated? We've all met these kind of strange people who refuse to accept the end of a relationship when it's really clearly communicated to them. Can they have some sway in this? What do you think?
What do you mean in terms of
Can they persuade a court that the separation is not valid because they don't want, they refuse to accept it?
If they can show that you're not in fact separated, then yes, they can have some influence, but they'll need to provide some sort of evidence, and it's going to have to be more than...
come back to a Tracy Emin installation of the bedroom.
Yeah, it may be in the form of things like text messages. You may be sending mixed signals, and if that is the case, well, you might have a bit of a fight on your hands. But generally, though, just because one party doesn't want to separate doesn't mean that the court's not going to accept that as a separation.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be mutual, does it? It just has to be communicated effectively.
In a lot of cases, it's not mutual. And that's why we have so many allegations of violence, and we have so many allegations of revenge tactics and these games that people play, because they're scorned, they're upset.
Angry.
Yep.
They're hurting.
Yeah.
I think it might be helpful just to sort of to wrap up the topic by giving any listeners or even viewers, heaven help you, with some hints and tips. If you are going to separate, but you, through financial or maybe parenting reasons, you say, I'm going to stay put for a while though, how would you do things in that household to make it, well, one, easier for you day to day, and two, far more importantly, easier for your lawyer in the future to be able to demonstrate that separation? So I would be thinking about practical things like, if you have a spare bedroom, use it. Don't, where possible, share a bed. I know we joked about that, and that those things, people accidentally fall into the same bed.
Whoops, I slipped.
Whoops, oh yeah. Whoops, I slipped and I fell into the au pair. I do apologise. So use the spare bedroom. Create new bank accounts. I'm a great believer in saying, let's have a brand new, fresh email account, because you never know. And you can create one within a matter of moments.
But just be careful what you call it. I had one not long ago, and it said evidence for shithead. Don't call it that, because what's going to happen is you're going to attach that. It's going to be evidence for shithead, like evidence number for shithead, at gmail.com. It's going to be next to an affidavit at some point, potentially.
It's not a good look.
No. We don't do that. Okay. Nice email address. Neutral,
so we might create new bank accounts, make sure that we're putting our money. So if you've had a joint account, for example, but you're still going to be sharing expenses, maybe it's time to have an account just in your sole name, and then you transfer what money's needed to meet the joint expenses into that old joint account, or you create a new one. But a trail, so you're very much separated and you're moving things across administratively into your own name, so it looks like, and you are in fact living your own life, just sharing the bricks and mortar, and the utilities coming into the house.
And a couple of very independent things, okay? One, contact Centrelink. Tell them that you are now separated. Two, next tax return. No, you don't have a spouse. List it as no. Three, if you've got kids, contact the school and say, we've separated. Please send it to these two separate email addresses now, and any other medical facilities or anything like that. That's probably the best way, because that will be a very clear date, and they'll say, well, definitely wasn't after that date, was it?
There's another couple of things as well, which are a little bit more maudlin, but I'll mention them. If you don't change your will and you've separated but haven't divorced, or you're in that uncertain, you have separated but it's not been resolved yet, you should go and see a wills and estates lawyer. I mean, you can contact us and we'll certainly put you in touch with the right people. Get a will done that contemplates what's happened and the change in circumstances, so that your estate can be dealt with in the right way. In case you are accidentally tripping down the stairs one morning by accident, maybe with some of those dirty socks in the laundry that you go spinning off onto. And the other thing is, flowing on from that, you might have an enduring power of attorney, for example, what they call a living will sometimes. And very often you'll have your partner nominated as the attorney for you. So again, if you do slip on that sock in the laundry that's been out there and grown mold, and you bang your head and you're in hospital and you can't make decisions for you, do you really want the person to make the decision about the switching the on and the off machine to be your ex? Probably not. So on a practical level, that's a simple thing to do. Go and see an estates lawyer, contact us and we'll put you in touch with the right one, and get those two things sorted out as well. And of course, from our family lawyer's perspective, what that's doing is giving us wonderful evidence that, I went to go and see a professional to get my life sorted out.
Yep. All good.
And my post life. All right, well, that will probably wrap up on separating under one roof. If you've got questions, please don't hesitate to send them in to us, and we'll talk about those in an episode in the future. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you. See ya.
Bye.